Hey guys, it's your boy Progress, and welcome to a brand new video. If you want to follow my other social media, I've got my Instagram on screen and in the description, so if you want, then go check that out. But today, we will actually be talking about somebody I spoke about almost 2 months ago now, and based off of if you read the title, you would know that that is Young Bands. Because since the last video that I did on him, he has actually now responded to that, as well as now it turns out that there are even more people that he scammed, which came to me after seeing my video with their stories, which I want to share with you guys today. This is of course in hopes that Young Bands stops doing this type of stuff because it becomes so public that he has no choice but to go low profile. And also, of course, I want to show you guys some of the massive red flags that come up during these experiences that these guys went through, so that any of you guys out there who are trying to work with other artists will be able to see some of these red flags and hopefully avoid getting scammed yourself in the future. And also, if you're a little bit confused as to what happened to kind of start all of this in the first place, then absolutely go and watch the last video that I did on Young Bands, because that will obviously explain everything. That video that I did on him last will be linked in the description below, so go check that out if you need to. But anyway, let's get into the first topic. Of course, that being Young Bands actually responding to my video. And geez, I am really starting to see now why so many rappers have to have somebody who controls their social media like a strict parent, because man, Young Bands needs that so bad. Basically, Young Bands actually privated his Instagram account not long after my video came out, which I think is for two reasons. One is that he was starting to get comments that were calling him a scammer on his Instagram, and also because people were going after him as well because they found out that he was getting with Bad Baby, who is a minor, and he actually grabbed her, lifted her up on Instagram Live, aimed her butt towards the camera, and shook her so that her butt would shake for the camera, which is weird. It's creepy. Obviously, I understand that you guys should know that, but like, I just thought I should mention it because it kind of adds to the guy's character of just not caring about anything, even if it's messed up. But of course, while his Instagram was private was actually when he decided to respond to my video, which is extremely pathetic. So I originally couldn't see it because I don't follow his account, and since it was private, I just didn't have access to it. But luckily, another Instagram account called Rap Spotlights actually ended up doing a post where they showed what his response was, because they had screen recorded his Instagram story, which is where he posted it to. Oddly enough though, not long after they originally posted that, it ended up getting taken down, so whether that was because Young Bands contacted them or just because they were worried about backlash or something, I don't really know, because it seemed like people were supporting the post that they had done. But luckily, I screen recorded their screen recording, so it doesn't make a difference for me. So I will now present to you the absolute intellectual megamind that is Young Bands, and how he decided to respond to a situation about him scamming people.
We're not here to be congratulating him on his successes, no. In fact, we are here to talk about some bad things that he's been up to.
Yeah, like I said, pathetic. You have to keep in mind that this is a 21-year-old man who is responding like a 15-year-old kid in high school who's getting sent to the principal's office for being too loud in class. Only different, the only small difference, of course, is just that it's not getting sent to the principal's office for being loud, it's scamming somebody out of $2,500. Now, if anybody's counting, of course. Totally worth the same response, though. Am I right, guys? So yeah, basically, if Young Bands is gonna respond to a situation of him scamming in that manner, and also gonna be a coward about it and private his Instagram while he responds to it, this should start to show you guys what type of person he really is. So now, though, I want to move on to talking about the stories that happened with these other two people, because I want you guys to see that he clearly has a systematic thing of doing this. Because one major theme that has been consistent through all three of these stories, which you guys will learn about the other two in just a minute, is that all of them have this thing where they are trying to get in contact for a feature, and somehow they end up getting an open verse from Young Bands that was given to other people already. And of course, this was not something that was just generally known to these people when they paid for their features and got the open verse. They didn't know that this was given to other people. So let's get into the first of these two new guys who came forward about being scammed, and the first guy's name is Young Aardvark. Now, he is actually going to be the oldest known case of Young Band scamming that I have actually ever seen, because his goes all the way back to October 10th of 2017. The interaction between Young Bands and Aardvark originally started through email, with Aardvark reaching out to Bands asking about getting a feature from him, with Young Bands responding asking what his budget was, as well as if he could get him the money that same day. As I have said in many other videos, I have a massive problem with budgets. I see budgets as a huge red flag for multiple reasons. Because it makes no sense to have one person pay more or less money just because they can pay more or less money, especially when we're dealing with a product that hasn't even been created yet to judge the quality of what it might be worth. Because the worst thing of all is that most of the time, the guys who end up paying a lesser amount end up getting a lesser quality product. And you might be saying, okay, well, that should be general knowledge. But that is not something that is told to the people. You can't just assume that, oh, it is general knowledge. But anyway, Aardvark ends up saying that his budget is $500 and that he is able to pay that day, and then asks Bands which payment service he uses, as well as saying that he would be able to get the song that he wants Bands to feature on to him by that weekend. Anyway, though, I do want you guys to pay attention here, though, how Bands responded saying that he was good with the $500, because that's what he's responding to here. And then he asks for his number, because apparently after Aardvark gave his number to Young Bands, Bands ended up calling him and said that $500 wasn't enough money, and then they agreed upon another $200 payment that would be completed the following week, which you can see Young Bands reminding Young Aardvark to pay that to him after he sent him the original $500. Increasing a payment amount after you have already agreed to a different payment amount is just extremely scummy, and obviously that doesn't need to be explained in that much detail, but I want you guys to be able to understand how extremely manipulative that is. Essentially, he reeled the guy in saying, oh yeah, $500 works, and then he pulls it at the last second and says, okay, but actually, you know, $500 isn't enough. You know, maybe we should do $200. And the thing is that there are people out there who aren't, you know, strong enough mentally, or maybe they just don't have the confidence enough to be able to stand up against somebody who is of that size, because they have this worry that they might be able to get this opportunity that could never possibly happen again, so they don't want to risk the idea that they might end up backing out because they won't pay them the extra amount. So most often, of course, the person is going to end up paying the extra money when they realistically shouldn't have to, because when it was agreed upon, they said $500 was good. But as I kind of already mentioned, Young Bands ended up getting the total $700 out of Young Aardvark because he didn't challenge it. And to make it worse, Young Aardvark ended up getting an open verse from Young Bands, not even a feature, which is what they originally talked about doing. Which I'm assuming maybe there was a phone call where Young Bands ended up convincing Young Aardvark to just do an open verse, because Young Bands does that, and you will see that consistently here. And it makes it so much worse because of the idea, knowing now that Young Aardvark ended up getting an open verse from Young Bands that was given to another person. So in the grand scheme of things, Young Bands made Young Aardvark pay an extra $200 for something he had already sold to somebody else and was already released. That is extremely messed up. But now let's fast forward a little bit into the future, when Young Bands has a little bit more traction after some of his songs start blowing up, to find ourselves at May 17th, 2018. We have a guy named Mark Countup who ended up messaging Young Bands on Instagram asking how much his feature prices were. Instead, this time Young Bands didn't end up saying anything about a budget, he just responds saying that the amount is $1,500 it'll cost him. But once again, this basically shows how insanely useless and scammy budgets already are to begin with, because just 2 months later, young bands would end up charging Fanto $2,500 for a verse, and yet Mark Countup 2 months previously would just be paying $1,500. So unless somebody in the audience can kind of, go out of their way to tell me exactly how Young Band's feature price went up $1,000 in 2 months, then to me, it seems a lot like Young Band is just tossing darts at a dartboard and hits a random dollar value that he set up there that he's gonna charge a person that day, because there is no consistency to that whatsoever. Anyway though, Mark says that $1,500 works for him and that he's ready to pay on PayPal, and after being told where to send it, he ends up doing exactly that. Plus, he ends up sending bands the song that he wants him to feature on, but doesn't hear back from him for another 3 days. Which after that, Young Band says he'll have the song back to him that day. Which of course he doesn't end up getting it the next day, because nobody gets it the next day when Young Band says that. And then the day that he was actually supposed to have it completed for, he ends up sending a message to Mark asking if he can send the song again, because I guess he lost it again, which makes no sense. Like, how are you saying you were gonna have it finished that day and then the next day you're asking for him to send the song again because you lost it or something? What? That doesn't even make sense. But Young Bands ends up saying that Mark instead has the option of getting, quote, a harder song with an open verse, end quote. Which Mark then declines this offer and says he'll just resend his song to him, and then Young Bands comes back responding with, quote, you don't want the song I got, end quote. And to me, I see this as a pretty massive red flag, and I'm sure that most people would, because trying to change what you owe a person after you've already been paid to do what they want you to do is extremely sketchy. But Mark Countup ends up saying that he'll give his song a listen, even though he thinks the song that he wanted to feature on is good anyway, and that he thinks that bands would sound good on it. And he also ends up responding later saying that he just wants Young Bands to record on the song he sent him. Which then Young Bands would stop responding to Mark Countup for almost 2 weeks. Just to finally message back on June 2nd, 2018, saying that he apparently was looking for him, and so Mark had to send him his email again, just for Bands to end up sending an open verse, not the actual feature, which is what he paid for. And Mark wouldn't even find out that he was given an open verse that was sent to other people until 4 months later on September 25th of 2018, where at the time he thought it was actually just sent to 2 other people, and then obviously that would be 3 total including himself. But no, he actually now has found out since then that it was 3 other people the song was sent to. So that's right, Young Bands charged Mark Countup $1,500 for a thing that he sent to 4 people at least that we know of in total. It's almost shameless how Young Bands decides to go about doing this with scamming people. And I absolutely do not want to see anymore where people are commenting, because I do still see it happening, where they're just like,
oh, actually, bro, it's not scamming, it's just finessing, and it's part of the game.
If that is the mindset that you walk into this video with or leave this video with, then I absolutely want you to understand that an abacus has more functionality in today's society than you do. Because scamming has never and will never be okay. Whoa, go figure. So please absolutely go and support Mark Countup and Young Aardvark because of having to deal with this situation. You guys are always really cool about it, and you go and give criticism, or you go and listen to their music and enjoy it. Whatever it ends up being, their links will be in the description, so go check them out if you want to. But anyway, that's gonna have to do it for today's video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed, and I really hope that this is the last video that I end up having to make on Young Bands, and that he completely stops with this whole scamming nonsense, and that I don't have to hear that he's done it to any more people that in the more recent times, because just why? Also, massive shout out to all of my patrons. You guys are super, super awesome, and of course, a special super awesome shout out to all of the $10 and up patrons this month, those being Farsky, Midwest Funky, Helen, Karma, Ryan, Foxy Lovitz, Chad Sunshine, Jojo Bean, Ryan Meth, and Kyo. You guys are absolutely amazing, and the support recently has been off the charts. I could have never expected to have, that many patrons who are donating, so thank you guys so much, because it genuinely does help so much when it comes to creating this content and being able to get it out consistently for you guys. Thank you for everything that you do. I will always be grateful for that. But yeah, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and remember, as always, it should be art over algorithm. Goodbye.
I've come a long way like a traveler in the night. I was working in the dark and now everything's bright. Always told that I was wrong, now I'm feeling pretty right. Pushing open closed curtains, now there's people in my life. They told me I wouldn't be shit, I'll prove them wrong.